I have never seen anything like this. Dozens and dozens of whistleblowers, FBI agents coming to us, talking about what's going on, the political nature at the Justice Department.
It's clear to me that the Justice Department and the FBI are suffering from a political infection.
Why didn't the mainstream media robustly investigate how they were all duped? The answer is they weren't duped. They were complicit.
When those who dare to challenge the establishment are targeted by this powerful conglomerate, and it sends a very powerful message. If you dare to challenge us, we will come after you.
All right, well, a brand new House panel investigating the weaponization of the federal government today held its first hearing on the FBI and the Department of Justice and the attacks on American civil liberties, specifically when it comes to social media platforms like Twitter. For more on insights to today's hearings, let's welcome in a member of that subcommittee, Florida Congressman Cammack. Congressman, always good to see you. So you guys held your first hearing today. Yesterday, the House Oversight Committee held a hearing grilling Twitter executives about all of the things that they did to suppress the Hunter Biden laptop story. The interesting thing was, in both cases, I felt like the legacy media was like nothing to see in either case. So you tell me, what do people need to know were the big takeaways from the hearing today?
Well, and good to see you both. And Sean, don't forget that yesterday in the Energy and Commerce Committee, in an oversight hearing, I presented an email from NIH Director Francis Collins to CDC Director Anthony Fauci with the now current NIH Director CC'd on it, stating that they needed to have a quick and devastating takedown of the scientists and doctors who were publishing information contrary to the official CDC position. And of course, that same language showed up several months later in emails from the Biden administration to Twitter executives. So it isn't just the DOJ, it isn't just FBI, it is the NIH, it's NSF, it's CDC, it's the FDA. Every single one of these federal agencies has elements that are rotten. And so today, we, of course, were highlighting the broad swath of these abuses of government. The warrantless data collection, where parents have been labeled domestic terrorists, despite the fact that there is no statute on domestic terrorism. You have all of these examples throughout government where government is seeking to weaponize against the citizens that they are supposed to serve. And of course, from the left, they continually hearken back to Trump, January 6th, Trump, January 6th. It was a broken record. But I'll tell you something, this is very, very powerful that we are exposing this, investigating it, because this is the work that is going to lead to the fundamental changes that empower Americans rather than continue to strip them of their civil and constitutional rights.
I mean, just the language that you mentioned that you talked about from NIH, I mean, that sounds like something that you would hear from communist China, not coming from the United States government at the end of the day. But, you know, it is interesting because we hear so much about the FBI. They themselves keep trying to make the case that they're not political. The decisions made within the organization are not political. However, day after day, we hear whistleblowers or former agents who have presented testimony that certain decisions are, in fact, based on politics. I mean, so one, what did you learn and what can you do? Because it's one thing to expose it, but another thing to actually fundamentally change the institution.
So a couple things there. The reason why this select committee is so important and structured the way that it is because all of us serving that were handpicked to serve on this select committee, there's only 12 of us. We each represent a variety of different committees with different jurisdictions in Congress. So when we talk about big tech, when we talk about NIH, FDA, CDC, those are reforms that will be then referred off to the Energy and Commerce Committee, who has the jurisdiction over those issues. When you talk about the FBI and the DOJ, there will be recommendations that go to that committee, the Judiciary Committee, for recommendations, legislative action that will then stop this type of behavior. But you point to a very great point about the fact that whistleblowers are a cornerstone of this committee. We heard today from an FBI agent, now retired, Miss Barker. She talked about how the culture had shifted during her time at the Bureau, and how during the quote-unquote summer of love, which we all know to be the summer of violence, where BLM was basically burning cities down and CNN was calling them fiery but mostly peaceful, you saw that you had FBI agents in full riot gear kneeling before BLM protesters, taking pictures, marching with them. And those same agents were then subsequently rewarded with gift cards and, even worse, promotions within the Bureau. They have talked about so many of the rotten core elements where the Washington Bureau itself is seeking to consolidate power away from the field offices while simultaneously pushing down a political agenda and lines that those field offices have to toe, rather than do the job that they all signed up for. So this is not an assault or an attack on the good rank and file agents of the FBI. This is us going after the politically directed and motivated leadership of the FBI.
Right.
It's so important to call that aspect out, right? Not the demonization of agents, but more of what's happening at the leadership. Before we let you go, I do want to ask you this, because so many of your fellow members in the House have actually signed on a letter calling out DirecTV and AT&T for deplatforming us, Newsmax, from their channel lineup. Is that something that you share concern of as well? I only have about a minute left for you, Congresswoman.
Certainly. I think that we as conservatives have experienced an assault on free speech. I mean, heck, that's what the Weaponization Committee, we're trying to push back and protect our constitutional rights. And of course, conservatives have been deplatformed, shadow banned for so long. It's so funny that you mentioned that. I have that letter sitting on my desk. I can't wait to sit down and actually have time to read it. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking a look at that letter, and it's always good to see you. Thanks for being here with us and giving us an insight on that new subcommittee. We'll have to check back in with you again.
Appreciate it. Have a good one, guys.